The Apache people were among the most feared Native American tribes in North American history, known for their unmatched skill in warfare and survival. They lived across harsh deserts, rugged mountains, and dense forests, environments that shaped them into exceptionally tough and adaptable warriors. From an early age, Apache children were trained to endure hunger, heat, cold, and exhaustion without complaint. This upbringing created fighters who could travel long distances with minimal supplies and still be ready for battle. The Apache did not believe in fighting fair by enemy standards. Instead, they mastered guerrilla warfare long before the term ever existed. They used surprise, speed, and deep knowledge of the land to strike suddenly and disappear without a trace. Enemies often never saw an Apache warrior until the attack was already over. Their ability to blend into the landscape made them almost invisible. They could hide among rocks, trees, and shadows, watching their targets for days before making a move. Apache warriors carefully studied enemy behavior, learning patrol routes, weaknesses, and habits. When the moment was right, they attacked with ruthless precision. Unlike large tribal armies, Apache war parties were usually small and highly mobile. This made them difficult to track and nearly impossible to surround. They preferred night raids, using darkness as a weapon. The sudden screams, arrows, and gunfire in the night created panic and confusion among their enemies. Many settlers and rival tribes described Apache attacks as terrifying and unpredictable. Fear often spread faster than the warriors themselves. The Apache understood that psychological warfare was just as powerful as physical combat. They used fear to weaken their enemies before a single blow was struck. Apache warriors moved silently, sometimes walking barefoot across rocky terrain without leaving clear tracks. They knew how to erase footprints and confuse trackers. Even experienced soldiers struggled to follow them through the desert and mountains. The land itself seemed to protect the Apache. Their weapons were simple but deadly. Bows, arrows, spears, knives, and later firearms were used with expert skill. Apache arrows were often fired from close range, ensuring maximum damage. Every strike was meant to be quick and decisive. They rarely wasted energy on prolonged battles. If a fight could not be won quickly, they disappeared and waited for another opportunity. Survival was central to Apache culture. War was not about glory, but about protecting their people and territory. They viewed outsiders as threats to their way of life. Every attack was a response to invasion, broken agreements, or stolen land. The Apache were also masters of endurance. They could go days without food or water while traveling through unforgiving terrain. This ability shocked their enemies. Soldiers often collapsed from exhaustion while Apache warriors continued moving. Apache leaders were chosen based on skill and experience, not inheritance. Only the strongest and smartest warriors earned respect. This created highly disciplined war groups. Every fighter understood their role and followed orders without hesitation. Apache warriors were deeply spiritual. They believed that powerful spirits guided and protected them in battle. Before raids, they performed rituals to seek strength, courage, and protection. This belief made them fearless in combat. Death was not feared. It was seen as part of the natural cycle of life and honor. Apache women also played a vital role. They supported warriors, gathered intelligence, and ensured the survival of the tribe. Children grew up hearing stories of legendary fighters and battles. These stories kept the warrior spirit alive across generations. When European settlers and American forces tried to control Apache lands, resistance was fierce. The Apache refused to surrender easily. Famous leaders like Geronimo became symbols of defiance and resilience. They used every advantage the land provided to fight stronger armies. Despite facing advanced weapons and larger forces, the Apache continued resisting for decades. Their persistence frustrated and exhausted their enemies. Many military campaigns against them failed. The cost of fighting the Apache was high in both lives and resources. Even after capture or forced relocation, Apache resistance did not disappear. Their spirit remained unbroken. The reputation of the Apache as terrifying warriors spread across the continent. Stories of their raids became legends whispered in fear. To this day, the Apache are remembered not just for their ferocity but for their intelligence and resilience. They were not mindless killers but strategic defenders of their homeland. Their legacy is one of strength, survival, and unyielding resistance. History remembers them as warriors who refused to bow, even when the world tried to crush them. The Comanche were among the most dominant and feared Native American tribes in North American history, ruling the vast open plains with unmatched confidence and power. Their homeland stretched across what is now Texas, Oklahoma, and surrounding regions, an endless sea of grass that perfectly suited their fast and aggressive way of life. Unlike many other tribes, the Comanche built their entire culture around the horse. When they first encountered horses brought by the Spanish, they mastered them with astonishing speed. The Comanche did not simply ride horses, they became one with them. They could mount, dismount, and fight at full speed with incredible balance and control. From early childhood, Comanche boys learned to ride before they could properly walk. Falling from a horse was considered a normal part of growing up. This early training created warriors who were fearless and highly skilled. Their mobility gave them a deadly advantage over enemies who fought on foot. Comanche warriors could fire arrows accurately while hanging from the side of a galloping horse. This technique allowed them to use the horse as a moving shield. Their attacks were fast, loud, and overwhelming. Entire settlements could be destroyed before help ever arrived. The Comanche preferred sudden raids rather than long battles. Speed and shock were their greatest weapons. They appeared without warning, struck hard, and vanished just as quickly. By the time enemies organized a defense, the Comanche were already gone. Fear followed them across the plains. Stories of their raids spread far beyond their actual territory. The Comanche understood the value of terror. They knew fear could break resistance faster than force alone. They often attacked at dawn when camps were most vulnerable. The chaos of screaming horses and warriors created instant panic. Comanche war cries echoed across the plains, signaling death and destruction. Many enemies fled without even attempting to fight back. Their weapons were simple but effective. Bows, arrows, lances, knives, and later firearms were used with deadly precision. Comanche bows were short and powerful, designed for use on horseback. Every warrior carried multiple weapons for different combat situations. The tribe valued bravery above all else. A warrior's reputation was built through courage and success in battle. Young men sought glory by proving themselves in raids. Cowardice brought shame not just to the individual but to their family. Coma. NGH society was organized around strength and leadership. Chiefs were chosen for their ability to lead, not by birthright alone. This ensured that leaders were experienced fighters and respected strategists. Every decision was made with survival and dominance in mind. The Comanche controlled trade routes and hunting grounds across the plains. They defended their territory with relentless aggression. Any outsider entering their land without permission risked death. This strict control kept enemies constantly on edge. They were also skilled hunters, especially of the buffalo. The buffalo provided food, clothing, shelter, and tools. Their survival depended on the land, and they protected it fiercely. Any threat to their resources was treated as an act of war. When European settlers expanded westward, conflict became inevitable. The Comanche viewed settlers as invaders, not neighbors. They launched repeated raids to push settlers back. For decades, they successfully resisted colonization. Even well-armed armies struggled against Comanche tactics. Traditional military formations were useless against their speed. Soldiers found it impossible to chase or corner them. The Comanche always chose when and where to fight. Their endurance was legendary. They could ride for days with little rest or food. This stamina allowed them to strike far from home and return safely. Few enemies could match this level of mobility. Comanche women also played important roles in tribal life. They managed camps, processed food, and supported warriors. Their strength kept the tribe functioning during long campaigns. Without them, Comanche dominance would not have been possible. Children were raised with stories of great warriors and victories. These stories shaped their identity and sense of purpose. The arrival of more settlers and advanced weapons eventually weakened Comanche power. Diseases and loss of buffalo herds devastated their population. Despite these hardships, their reputation remained unmatched. The plains still remembered the thunder of their horses. The Comanche were not merely raiders, they were masters of their environment. They shaped the plains into a kingdom of speed and fear. History remembers them as one of the greatest horse cultures ever known. Their legacy is written in dust, blood, and the endless horizon of the open plains. The Mohawk people were among the most feared and respected warriors of northeastern North America, known for their ruthless efficiency and powerful presence in battle. As one of the original members of the Iroquois Confederacy, they held a strategic position that made them both guardians and aggressors. Their homeland lay along vital river routes and forest paths, allowing them to control movement and trade across large regions. This geographic advantage turned them into natural defenders and relentless attackers. From a young age, Mohawk boys were trained to become warriors. Strength, discipline, and emotional control were valued above comfort or softness. Pain was not something to be avoided, but endured. This mindset prepared them for the brutal realities of war. The Mohawk believed warfare was not just physical, but deeply psychological. Breaking the spirit of the enemy was as important as defeating them in combat. One of their most feared practices was scalping. This act was meant to humiliate enemies and send a clear message of dominance. Scalps were taken as trophies and symbols of victory. They represented courage, skill, and survival. The sight of a Mohawk warrior often struck fear before any battle began. Their distinctive hairstyles, war paint, and weapons created an intimidating image. Mohawk war cries echoed through forests and valleys. These sounds alone could cause enemies to flee in terror. They preferred ambush tactics rather than open field battles. Forests became their battlefield and weapon. Mohawk warriors moved silently through dense woods. They knew how to use shadows, trees, and terrain to their advantage. Enemies rarely saw them coming. By the time an attack was noticed, it was already too late. Their raids were swift and deadly. Villages could be overwhelmed in moments. The Mohawk fought with clubs, tomahawks, bows, and later firearms. Each weapon was used with deadly precision. Close combat was common. Mohawk warriors were trained to strike decisively and without hesitation. They showed little mercy during war. This reputation alone discouraged many from challenging them. The Mohawk were not random killers. Their violence followed strict cultural rules and objectives. War was often fought for territory, revenge, or political power. Every raid served a larger purpose. As part of the Iroquois Confederacy, the Mohawk played a key military role. They were often called the Keepers of the Eastern Door. This meant they defended the Confederacy from eastern threats. Their responsibility required constant readiness for war. They formed strong alliances and understood diplomacy as well as violence. Peace and war were both tools to ensure survival. During conflicts with European settlers, the Mohawk adapted quickly. They learned to use firearms and new tactics. This adaptability made them even more dangerous. Many colonial forces underestimated them. The Mohawk used intelligence gathering to their advantage. They monitored enemy movements and planned attacks carefully. Surprise remained their greatest weapon. Even well-armed enemies were vulnerable to sudden strikes. Mohawk warriors believed courage was proven through action, not words. Retreat was only acceptable if it ensured future victory. Captured enemies were sometimes taken for ritual purposes. These acts were meant to restore balance and honor. Spiritual belief was deeply connected to warfare. The Mohawk believed spirits guided their actions. Before battles, rituals were performed to seek strength and protection. These ceremonies strengthened unity and resolve. Death in battle was considered honorable. Fear of death was seen as weakness. Mohawk women also held influence within the tribe. They played roles in decision-making and maintaining social balance. Their support gave warriors stability and purpose. The entire community was involved in survival. Children were raised on stories of legendary warriors and great victories. These stories preserved the warrior tradition. As European expansion increased, conflicts intensified. The Mohawk fiercely defended their lands. They became deeply involved in colonial wars. Their choices shaped the balance of power. Over time, loss of land and disease weakened their numbers, yet their spirit remained unbroken. The Mohawk reputation as terrifying warriors endured for generations. Enemies remembered them with fear and respect. They were not savage myths but disciplined fighters. Their methods were calculated and effective. History remembers the Mohawk as masters of psychological warfare. They understood that fear could be deadlier than steel. Their legacy lives on as warriors who controlled forests and mines alike. Even today, their name carries the weight of power and terror. The Aztec civilization produced some of the most feared warriors in ancient history, known for their discipline, brutality, and deeply ritualized approach to war. For the Aztecs, warfare was not merely a struggle for land or power, but a sacred duty tied directly to religion and survival. They believed the gods demanded constant nourishment in the form of human blood and hearts. Without these offerings, the sun would stop rising and the world would fall into darkness. This belief transformed war into a holy mission. Every battle was fought not just to defeat enemies, but to capture them alive. Unlike many cultures that focused on killing opponents, Aztec warriors aimed to seize prisoners. These captives were destined for ritual sacrifice atop towering temples. Aztec society was highly militarized. From a young age, boys were trained in combat, discipline, and obedience. Military schools taught tactics, endurance, and the use of weapons. Warriors were expected to be fearless and loyal above all else. Status in Aztec society depended heavily on success in war. The more captives a warrior took, the higher his rank and honor. Elite warrior groups emerged from this system. The jaguar and eagle warriors became symbols of terror and power. Dressed in animal skins and feathered armor, they looked otherworldly on the battlefield. Their appearance alone struck fear into enemy ranks. Aztec weapons were designed to maim rather than kill instantly. The macuhuitl, a wooden sword edged with razor-sharp obsidian blades, was especially feared. A single strike could shatter bones or leave enemies helpless. This allowed warriors to capture victims alive. Aztec armies marched in massive formations. Drums, horns, and chants echoed across the land as they advanced. The sound itself was meant to terrify opponents. Psychological warfare began long before combat started. Enemies knew what awaited them if captured. The thought of sacrifice broke morale and resistance. Once a city was defeated, captives were paraded publicly. This display reinforced Aztec dominance and divine favor. Temples became stages of fear. Sacrificial ceremonies were visible to entire cities. Priests, dressed in ritual garments, carried out the offerings. The blood spilled was believed to feed the gods. These acts were not seen as cruelty by the Aztecs. They were considered necessary to maintain cosmic balance. Warriors who provided captives were honored during these rituals. Their names and deeds were remembered. The Aztec Empire expanded rapidly through fear and force. Neighboring states often submitted without fighting. Tribute flowed into the capital, Tenochtitlan. Gold, food, textiles, and prisoners sustained the empire. However, the Aztecs also practiced strategic restraint. They allowed some enemies to survive to ensure future wars. These conflicts, known as flower wars, were ritualized battles. Their primary purpose was to capture sacrificial victims. This constant state of warfare kept warriors sharp and society united. Peace was considered dangerous and unnatural. Aztec warriors believed death in battle or sacrifice was honorable. Such deaths guaranteed a place in the afterlife. Fear of death held little power over them. This made them exceptionally dangerous opponents. When the Spanish arrived, they encountered a civilization hardened by ritual war. Early encounters shocked European soldiers. The Aztecs fought fiercely and without hesitation. They underestimated firearms but adapted quickly. Still, Internal resentment toward Aztec dominance weakened their position. Many conquered tribes joined the Spanish. Despite eventual defeat, Aztec warriors left a lasting impression. Their methods of war were unmatched in ritual intensity. They combined religion, terror, and discipline into a single system. This made them one of the most psychologically terrifying forces in history. The image of blood-soaked temples haunted their enemies. Fear became a weapon as powerful as any blade. Aztec warfare was not random violence, it was organized, symbolic, and deeply meaningful to their worldview. They fought to keep the universe alive. Every battle was part of a cosmic struggle. Even today, the legacy of Aztec warriors evokes awe and fear. They remain a powerful example of how belief can shape warfare. History remembers them not just as conquerors, but as servants of their gods. Their terrifying reputation was born from faith, discipline, and unrelenting purpose. The Sioux people were among the most resilient and formidable Native American nations, known for their deep spiritual strength and unbreakable will in times of war. They lived across the vast plains and rolling hills of North America, an environment that demanded toughness, patience, and unity. Life on the plains shaped the Sioux into disciplined survivors. Every aspect of their culture was connected to the land, the sky, and the spirits they believed guided their destiny. For the Sioux, warfare was not driven by cruelty or conquest alone. It was a sacred duty tied to honor, survival, and protection of their people. From a young age, Sioux boys were trained to endure hardship. They learned to ride horses, hunt buffalo, and face pain without fear. Strength of mind was valued as much as strength of body. A warrior who lacked spiritual balance was considered incomplete. Before battle, Sioux warriors participated in sacred rituals. These ceremonies were meant to prepare the soul for war. They believed that the spirits of their ancestors watched over them. This belief gave them confidence even in the face of death. Vision quests played a vital role in shaping warriors. Young men fasted and prayed alone to receive spiritual guidance. A vision could define a warrior's purpose in life. It was believed to grant protection, courage, or special power in battle. Sioux warriors painted their bodies with symbols before combat. Each color and mark carried spiritual meaning. These markings were not decoration, they were prayers written on the skin. On the battlefield, Sioux warriors were fearless and disciplined. They fought with bows, spears, clubs, and later firearms. Their horseback skills matched those of the greatest plains tribes. Speed and coordination gave them a tactical advantage. The Sioux did not rush blindly into combat. They observed, planned, and waited for the right moment. Ambushes were common. Enemies were often lured into traps across open terrain. The sound of Sioux war songs echoed across the plains. These songs strengthened warriors and terrified opponents. Courage was proven through action. A warrior earned respect by bravery, not by boasting. Taking risks in battle was seen as honorable. Touching an enemy without killing, known as counting coup, was a mark of great courage. This practice showed confidence and fearlessness. It demonstrated mastery over both body and fear. Sioux leaders were chosen for wisdom and experience. They led by example, not force. A chief who could not protect his people lost respect. Leadership was a responsibility, not a privilege. Women played a powerful role in Sioux society. They maintained the home, raised children, and preserved traditions. Their support gave warriors strength and purpose. Without them, the tribe could not survive. The Sioux fought fiercely against encroachment on their lands. They viewed settlers as a threat to their way of life. Broken treaties and stolen territory fueled their resistance. Each conflict deepened their determination. Battles against American forces became legendary. The Sioux proved they could defeat powerful armies. Victories like Little Bighorn became symbols of resistance. They showed that unity and belief could overcome superior weapons. Even in defeat, the Sioux spirit remained strong. Forced relocation did not erase their identity. They adapted while holding on to their traditions. Songs, stories, and rituals kept their history alive. The Sioux believed that death in battle was honorable. Fear of death did not control them. This mindset made them dangerous opponents. An enemy who does not fear death cannot be easily defeated. Their warriors fought not for wealth but for future generations. Every stand was made for the children yet to be born. The land was sacred to the Sioux. Defending it was a spiritual obligation. As buffalo herds disappeared, hardship increased, yet the Sioux endured with dignity. Their legacy is not defined by defeat, it is defined by resistance and survival. The Sioux were not savage warriors as often portrayed, they were disciplined fighters guided by belief and honor. Their strength came from unity and faith. They fought as protectors, not destroyers. Even today, the Sioux are remembered for their courage and resilience. Their story is one of endurance against overwhelming odds. History remembers the Sioux as warriors of spirit and land. They stood firm when their world was threatened. Their legacy lives on in the wind of plains, a reminder that true power begins with belief and purpose.